Ladies and gentlemen, we are now nearing the end of our time together, and we're going to now transition into closing remarks. And I'm going to invite my panelists to switch off their cameras, and I'm going to now invite distinguished professor from Sophia University, Mr. Yoshiteru Uramoto, to please take to the floor with his closing remarks. Sir, thank you very much, Prof. It's over to you.
Well, thank you for superb moderation, Natsifo. What a pleasure to be part of this great productive seminar. And I also thank Annette van der and the great ILO team for co-hosting the seminar with Sophia University. Our seminar towards the brighter future of work in a digital economy is so opportune to organize it now, and this has just ended with great success, I believe. I also thank Asada-san, newly appointed ILO Regional Director for Asia and the Pacific, for her opening remarks. I also wish to appreciate Parliamentary Vice Minister, Mr. Kazuhide Okuma, Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, Mr. Toshio Arima, Representative Director of United Nations Global Compact Network in Japan, and Ms. Maki Mori, Chairperson of ILO Association Japan, for their presence and much valued support for this seminar. Opening speeches and keynote speakers discussed about the shortage of ICT specialists and migration. Presentation of the panelists were very useful in the analysis and the suggestions for overcoming the shortage of the talents. The shortage are expressed by many, which in fact affects global market for ICT specialists. Of all the choices suggested, migration seems to be one of the most practical solutions. However, a global race for talented migrants, ICT specialists, appear to have already started and may well be heading for overheating. In a race for the talent and digitalization, a key driver for change, OECD countries, plus perhaps a few others, had advantages, of course, and would most likely win the race. However, many developing countries may be, as Mr. Banerjee may have mentioned, left behind as a possible loser, resulting in wider ICT and income gaps between the rich and the poor. This seminar, I believe, has given multilateral organizations, in particular OECD and ILO, a task of developing a fair platform for migration of special talents, either bilaterally, regionally, and perhaps better globally. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank all those who brought about this successful seminar. They include ILO Deputy Director of Sector, Isawa-san, who is completing his brilliant career with ILO today. Pity, but I hope I will see him back in Tokyo soon. And also Nakagome-san from ILO Geneva, and Mr. Shinichi Takeshi, Director of Takasaki of ILO Director Tokyo, and Horowitz-san of Sophia University. I thank you all. It was a great pleasure of participating in this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the distinguished Professor Ura Moto. Thank you very much, sir, for those closing remarks. I'd like to move on now to the chairman of the board of the Global Compact Network in Japan, Mr. Toshio Arima, if he could please take to the floor and extend his closing remarks for us too. Mr. Toshio Arima, please. Thank you so much. So I'm checking in and I'm not at this moment seeing a camera coming on for our guest, Mr. Toshio Arima. But let me then come back to Mr. Arima. Let me go to the director of the ILO office in Japan, Mr. Shinchi Takasaki, who I can see is online. So Mr. Takasaki, if you could please put your camera on and let's get your closing remarks. Thank you, sir. And I'll come back to Mr. Arima. Thank you so much.
Noji, thank you very much. Thank you for that kind introduction. My name is Shinichi Takasaki, Director of the ILO Office for Japan. And at the closing of this webinar, let me say a couple of words. So, first of all, to all the participants of this webinar and all those involved in the webinar, I'd like to express my gratitude. In the webinar, a mention was already made, but in the near future, with the digitalization of economy and society, lots of jobs might be overtaken by robots or automation, and lots of workers might lose their jobs. In that context, there has been discussion beginning regarding the theme of universal basic income. And we were holding this webinar in this kind of context, and here, ICT talent will provide great hope for humanity. And if we lose or do not have enough ICT sort of talent, it's going to be a great tragedy. And also, we need to look at education. Should we be teaching children skills which will not be useful in 20 years' time, 30 years' time? Also, using foreign workers within the ICT field and tapping their talent is going to be very important as we move forward. I hope that through today's webinar, we are able to come up with adequate measures and countermeasures to this, and we make small progress in every country. I very much hope that this is the case. So lastly, I'd like to thank once again all the participants of this webinar and make these my closing remarks. Thank you very much for all your participation and comments today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Takasaki. Brief, concise, and to the point. I'd like to call now Madam Maki Omori, the president of the ILO Association of Japan. Maki Omori, if you could please, Madam, extend your closing remarks for us in this conversation. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you for that kind introduction. My name is Omori. I was assigned as director of the ILO Association of Japan in August. The association came into being in 2011, and it is an NPO, non-profit organization, to support the activities of the ILO. And regarding some of the issues challenging ICT, I think this is particularly important and for women workers, because if you look at the labor market, if there are enough male workers, it's difficult for female workers to enter the job market. Only when there's a shortage of male workers, women workers have been called upon. There is this history, clearly. And unfortunately, if you look at the ICT field and ICT specialists, there is already this gender divide. And I hope that we can address this issue, and I think that we have gained some ideas as to how to address this gender gap, particularly in the ICT field. I hope that this webinar will also contribute to decent work in the digital sort of economy. I'd like to thank everyone who took part in this webinar. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. I think I just thank you very much, Madame Omori, for that contribution. I think I just saw the camera coming on with the UN Global Compact logo. I see the name that is under there is Tsune Oba. We are calling on Mr. Toshio Arima, the chairman of the board of the Global Compact Network in Japan. If Mr. Arima is available to please give us his closing remarks. Over to you, sir.
司会の方、聞こえますでしょうか。
Yes, Noti, can you hear me? I'm speaking in Japanese. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'd love to see you as well. So if you could put on your camera, that would be fantastic.
了解です。有馬、代表理事からですね、ちょっと今通信が途切れたということがありまして。
The connection has been cut off, unfortunately. I've just received a message from Mr. Arima to that effect. So let me speak on his behalf. Well, today we had a very broad discussion about ICT talent, and Mr. Arima was very happy to have been part of this webinar. As you know, the UN Global Compact carries out activities in 70 countries throughout the world, and in all these countries, the issue of ICT talent, we are aware that there are various challenges. We were able to hear a lot of interesting ideas about this, and we feel that we do need to cooperate with enterprises, with the private sector also, to address the challenges. The importance of soft skills was emphasized, and also the importance of human resources was mentioned. We need to look at it from a global perspective, and also look at the aspect of the protection of the human rights of these workers, ICT workers. I think this is also another important aspect. There are 13 branches of the Global Compact network in Japan, and we look at various issues related to the environment. So this is a brief introduction of who we are, and this is a message that Mr. Arima asked me to convey to you on his behalf, as his connection has been cut off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oba. I see that Mr. Arima has just managed to come back on. I see he's connecting with his audio, and so I know we've just run over 2 minutes in time, but if Mr. Arima, if you can hear me, if you could kindly please put on your camera and unmute yourself. I see you've rejoined us. Are there any closing words very briefly that you'd like to share with us?
Hello?
Yes, please,
Can
Mr.
you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you.
May I spend 2 minutes?
Yes, please, sir. Thank you.
I want to use Japanese.
That's
all right?
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
国連グローバルコンパクトの
From-
代表理事の有馬です。
My name is Arima from the Global Compact Network Japan. Thank you very much for your kind invitation today.
2つ申し上げたいと思うんですが、
I'd like to mention 2 points.
グローバルコンパクトネットワークジャパンでは分科会
At our Global Compact Network, there are 13 sort of teams looking at the issue of human rights, environment, disaster risk reduction, etc. 13 groups looking at various themes. And here, ICT is, of course, another important topic that we are actively discussing. And having listened to all the comments today, I think we need to look more broadly at workers' rights, also the need for cooperation between workers and employers, organizations. I received a lot of interesting information, and I think we need to feed back what we learned from today's webinar into our activity. Also, regarding ICT, there are, I think, some important points that I'd like to mention in this regard. First, is the role of digitalization. Well, digitalization has to serve the people so that weak people can benefit from better jobs and better work. It is a means to an end, but sometimes as people confuse this and consider digitalization to be an end in and of itself. So in this context, of course, the SDGs are very important. We need to recognize this. And with telework being introduced, the ITC systems are being introduced, widely introduced through cloud or various means. But this alone is not going to be enough. We need to look at the system, the management, and other aspects of this in terms of ICT. We have discussed these points within our group also, and I recognize once again the importance of such matters. And today, my new learning was, in a way, was the importance of soft skills. I learned a lot of interesting points regarding the importance of soft skills. It was a very interesting webinar. Thank you once again for your kind invitation to this webinar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arima. And again, of course, reminding us that digitalization is a means to an end, and we should not lose sight of where we are going, which is firmly towards the Sustainable Development Goals and the achievement of these by 2030. And I think, just like you, Mr. Arima, many of us learned many things today. So it's a very big thank you to all the panelists, all the speakers today, and of course, to all the partners who have made this possible. From myself, Nozipho Shabalala, it's been an absolute privilege to serve all of you today as the moderator of the conversation. I look forward to future opportunities. Please enjoy the rest of your evening, your afternoon, or your morning, depending on where you have joined us from. Remember to use the hashtag that we started off with this morning, which we're going to be cascading and using to amplify the conversation. Better future of work. That is our hashtag to continue the conversation. Thank you so much and goodbye.